situated in the front text, you tag, you call your friends. We're going to continue with the series on mold. Today, by the way, is the last day you can get your $50 off if you join the workshop, the M Cubed. Oh, I should be recording this. Hold on a second. Let me just get this started. So today is the last day that you can get the $50 off. Today's September 6th, and it's the last day you can get the $50 off the M Cubed Detox Experience, mold, metals, microbes, from treatment to recovery with support. So I'm hoping that today is the day that Dr. Ashley Biscoe speaks to your heart and you say, oh man, I need to do this. I deserve to do this. And so without further ado, I already started the record. We're going to fasten our seatbelts because we're going to learn and grow with Dr. Biscoe. It's time to open your mind and it's time to dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear. Bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning into the classroom for the first time, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, guess who's back? Really quickly, we needed to get Dr. Biscoe back, Dr. Ashley Biscoe from Attune Medical in Colorado, to come into the classroom once again, because as you know, we're doing the M Cube Detox Experience, mold, metals and microbes, from treatment to recovery with support. The with support is what I am most excited about, although we have some incredible teachers coming in to teach us on Tuesday nights from September 20th all the way to December 6th. We're going to come together. We're going to learn from the experts. We're going to take our health back, because if any of you have any chronic illness, skin condition, depression, anxiety, anything that you can think of, Dr. Biscoe is going to talk a lot more about this today. Could it be that you have some form of detoxing to do? And so, as you know, I learned about Dr. Biscoe back when I was experiencing some symptoms of exhaustion. And because of her, I learned about the Epstein-Barr connection and how to test it properly, so you know without a shadow of a doubt if there's been a recurrence. Well, little did I know that I would call her back, because people with mold and mold toxicity, mold can also reactivate Epstein-Barr. And I'm like, okay, I need to get her back. I need for her to share a little bit more about what she knows about mold toxicity, metals, microbes, whatever she wants to do, as we learn and grow together. And since it is our sole purpose to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Ashley Biscoe of Attune Medical is here to do just that. Welcome back. That was a quick turnaround, wasn't it?
It was. Thank you for having me back. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So for those of you who want to know Dr. Biscoe's credentials, she's a naturopathic doctor, and she shared a lot about what brought her to this point and become a naturopathic doctor. on our first one where we talk about Epstein-Barr. So I want to encourage you to go watch that. And we want to take as much information in from Dr. Biscoe, but share a little bit about your background and why mold is such an important part, an intricate part in your practice as well.
Sure. So just a little bit about my background. I got into naturopathic medicine because of my own health struggles. And I always say, once you become a patient, once you personally experience some of the shortcomings of our conventional healthcare system, your eyes are just wide awake. And so throughout my own healing journey, I learned about naturopathic medicine, and I felt really inspired to become the practitioner that I needed but couldn't find when I was really struggling. And there's this whole other world. So naturopathic philosophy is based on the premise that the body is self-healing and self-correcting. We have this inherent vital force. We call it the vis medicatrix, or the healing power of nature. I consider it also the life of God within us. He breathed his life into us. But we have a healing force in our body that is always trying to move in the direction of self-correction, healing, more life, repair, restoration. But sometimes there are hindrances, and this is where environmental medicine comes in. Sometimes there are roadblocks or hindrances that disrupt that flow. And so with the concept of environmental medicine, which ties into naturopathic medicine, we recognize that being healthy is so much more than what we do to our physical bodies. It's more than what we eat, how we move, how we sleep. There can be things in our surrounding that are making us sick, that are creating toxicity in the body. And it's up to us to identify what those are and do the best we can to remove ourselves from those exposures so that the body can get back into its flow of healing, which is our default. It's ordered, it's intelligent. Your body knows what to do when it has what it needs and when we remove those hindrances.
You know, when it has what it needs is such a powerful sentence right there, because we fall short from that. We stop the actual progression of healing with a pill. And I'm not against the pill. As you know, my registered service mark is you can take a pill, you can take responsibility. And it's not that I'm against the pill, is that I'm for doing whatever we can to help the body release whatever it needs to release. But we have a problem letting go of things. Isn't it interesting that, you know, people that are most controlling are probably the one that probably have the biggest issues with this, but it's the actual portion of letting go. So what are some of the reasons why somebody gets bit by a tick and nothing happens to them? Someone's exposed to mold, nothing happens to them. But then somebody else gets exposed to those two environmental events, and they are in their deathbed.
Yeah.
What is the difference between?
That's such a good question. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that in naturopathic medicine, we understand that different people have different constitutions. And this can tie into genetics, but essentially your constitution is kind of your essence. It's how robust you are, how vital you are, and we're all different. You've probably met people that seem really enthusiastic, they're big and bold. Other people seem to be a little bit more reserved, or they're very sensitive and everything tends to send them over the edge. So I think some of that is simply our uniqueness as individuals. And then of course that does tie into your genetics. So certain people have genetic predispositions that impact their immune system, their detoxification mechanisms, how they process different nutrients. There's all these variables. And then very importantly, there's this concept of the total load. And so when I look at a person, a patient sitting in front of me, I'm thinking, what are all of the stressors? What is the sum total of all of the disturbances in their normal functioning, the totality of all the stressors they've had? That could even be a past emotional trauma. It could be an acute poisoning or toxic exposure they had, years of sleep deprivation, whatever that is. And so if you think of your system or your body as a bucket, some of us have very large buckets and we can hold a lot of stressors, right? We, our tolerance or our threshold for living out of alignment with nature, with, poor diet, stressors, infections, we can handle a lot more. And then I always say some people are so sensitive, they were born with a tiny little cup. And so it doesn't take much to overwhelm their system. And if you think of it in terms of layers, sometimes our bucket can hold a lot of stressors, and then one thing can spill us over. That could be a divorce, some other emotional stress. It could be an infection that we get. So there's often a trigger that is kind of the final catalyst for causing that bucket to spill over. And when your bucket is full and spilling over, that's overwhelm. That is toxicity, whether that's emotional and or physical. And that's when you start to notice really the symptoms creep up, and often a magnification of those symptoms. But I want to point out that symptoms are not inherently bad. I learned in naturopathic school that the Latin root of the word symptom is indicative of. So it's telling us something. Symptoms are the perception that
she had a power outage. We just lost you. So
no.
we
And
just
I'm
lost you. And I
back.
thought this is a deja vu from our last conversation.
Yes, I know. So what was
Okay.
the last thing you heard? Sorry about that.
No, you were talking about symptoms, how symptoms can be.
Oh, yes.
Yes, good.
Yeah. So symptoms are indicative of some underlying disturbance. And it's really your body's way of compensating for that disturbance. So, for example, even if you have a cold, we call that being sick, but really your body is responding and discharging and purging to some threat. So we cough, we're expelling things. We have a runny nose, we're expelling things. The fever raises, and that helps to kill the microbes. Your body is doing what it's meant to do in the face of some stressor.
And we stop it. And we stop again, once again, we have a fever. Oh, take some medicine. We have a cold, take some medicine. Suppress. And again, that may work sometimes, but not all the time. And especially when the body is trying to get rid of it. It's so amazing. I've heard this more and more, that whenever there's a symptom, like a fever, for example, I've been getting temperatures of 103. Now, I don't know if this is part of the mold toxicity, Epstein-Barr, or a combination of both, but I never get a fever. Never. My temperature runs really low, like 97.6 or 96.8. I know that sounds really low, but my body has been functioning under that temperature. And when you see someone go from that to 100 right there, that's a temperature for me. And when you see me go to 103, the prior Lily would have gone and gotten some medication to stop the fever, but the fever is good up to a certain point, up to 100, what is 104, 105? What is that?
Around, once you cross the threshold of like 104, I start to get a little nervous that you don't want to cook your brain.
Well, you can go take a nice little warm bath, or a bath that could, there's other ways to bring the temperature down and cool your body, right? Go ahead. Just
No, you're absolutely right. And that's the main distinction between the conventional model of health versus a naturopathic model of health. And there is a time and a place for suppression, right? We don't want the fever to get too high, or, if you have a 2-year-old and the asthma is out of control, steroids are appropriate, especially if they can't communicate, that they can't breathe. So conventional medicine has saved lives, and it definitely has a time and a place. I just think it's so important that we recognize when we use a suppressive therapy, we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, or whatever that phrase is. We have basically silenced that compensatory mechanism, or the manifestation of that disturbance, and it can show up later. We can drive the inflammation deeper in other ways. It's a common scenario. Maybe there's a little kid with eczema, you put the steroid cream on it, you've suppressed that inflammation, and then 2 years later they have asthma. That inflammation didn't get expressed, the underlying dysfunction wasn't addressed, and the inflammation just continued to brew out of control. So whenever possible, and one of the principles of naturopathic medicine is tolle causum, treat the cause, identify and treat the cause. And there can be many root causes. Again, it's the cumulative effect over time, and it can be the total effect of all the different stressors interacting with each other. You know, maybe someone gets bitten by a tick and they might carry Lyme, but if their nutrient status is really good and they have very little stress in their life and their genetics are on point, they might not be sick. If another person contracts Lyme and they are nutrient deficient, stressed out all the time, not sleeping, exposed to chemicals, that could be a firestorm. So there are so many different variables. We really take an individualized approach to figure out where there are imbalances in what we call the foundations of health, the main things that we all need to be well.
Perfect. Okay, so now, what are some of the, like, people get a diagnosis, we go to the doctor, and, you know, we're having pain or can't sleep. Like one of my symptoms has been sleep disruption.
Oh, yeah.
And hair falling out. But the hair started falling out when we were in the home with the most mold. I mean, that was there. And then it kind of slowed down a bit, but it just started again. And so, you know, like when I say just started, when we moved into the home prior to this. So right now we're in a mold-free environment, which is great for me. But I know that there are people out there that keep adding, let's say they have a muddy tub. They were starting off with a muddy tub and they keep adding water to the muddy tub and they don't get rid of the mud. They just keep filling up the tub. They're still going to have muddy tub, but muddy water tub. So with that in mind, people go to the doctor and they're feeling sick. The doctor looks at the symptom and makes it a diagnosis. Oh, you have fibromyalgia, you have depression, you have this. What are some of the conditions that you have found in your clinic and through your studies that there could be, or most likely be, a correlation between mold and that particular diagnosis?
Oh, yeah. Literally anything. The first thing that comes to mind is chronic fatigue syndrome. Fatigue to the point of exhaustion is such a classic sign of mold. Headaches and migraines, right? Any sort of hormonal disruption. So everything from uterine fibroids to what we call menorrhagia, heavy menstrual bleeding. And that's because mold toxins can interfere with our entire endocrine system. And specifically, they can cause our testosterone to get converted into estrogen. So with men, think of prostate issues, man boobs, as they're called, or gynecomastia. With women, we might see fibrocystic breasts, heavy periods, endometriosis, right? Weakness, joint pain. So you might be diagnosed with arthritis. Any sort of lung issue, asthma, cognitive decline, or, you know, what we call brain fog. When I think of mold, I think of multi-system and multi-symptom. So these are a lot of different symptoms across a lot of different body systems. And that is exactly why people who have mold-related illness often get no diagnosis, and a lot of the standard testing won't show anything wrong per se, because what the traditional doctor thinks is a full workup is not really a full workup, and their symptoms are all over the place, and so it doesn't fit into a specific diagnostic box. When I order certain testing for mold toxins in my clinic, like there's not even an insurance code for it. You know, it's not even really being recognized, despite the fact that there are thousands of research studies about the effects of mold toxins, not just in humans, but in animals, in agriculture as well.
Wow.
Shortness of breath, cough, allergies. Going beyond like the seasonal allergies, these are the individuals that constantly have sinus congestion, food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, IBS, because mold can colonize the GI tract. So anything from loose stool, sometimes constipation and bloating, those can be common symptoms too.
Wow. And you're right. And you're right, because I was reading a list of, you know, mold related, and this was like a candida. Anne Baroque, before she passed, she was a regular on my show, and we did a 90-day candida cleanse. And so in her book, she had a list of all these symptoms, and I'm thinking, wow, once somebody, and this is like what I would do for myself, if I were ever to go to a doctor and they diagnose me, because cancer is one of the on the list is cancer, depression, anxiety. I was even reading, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this one, I don't mind that. The people that pull their hair, and all of a sudden they find themselves with like alopecia, but it's really them pulling, it's that anxiety. It could be also associated with mold. I started thinking, before I were to accept a diagnosis like that, is there testing that could prove that there isn't a co-infection, that there isn't something else? What do you suggest that somebody test to know, well, you know what, you have some mycotoxins or whatever, to show mold? What are some of those tests?
Yeah, that's great because there is no single test. And what I want to point out, just taking a few steps backwards, is that there are things that can mimic mold toxins, and I lump those under the categories of biotoxin illness. So bio means life, toxin is a poison. So these are any kind of poisons that come from living organisms. Most commonly, what we're looking at are myco. So myco means fungal, so fungal toxins from mold, or Lyme biotoxins. So things like Lyme disease, co-infections like Bartonella. Bartonella in particular, in my experience, can really look like mold. And so when I'm working with someone, if I'm seeing, and once you do this for a while, you kind of learn the picture of what a biotoxin illness can look like, and you look at the history. I'm kind of trying to decide, where to start. If finances are not a concern, I will look at both Lyme and co-infections and mold testing to see if it's both or one or the other. When it comes to mold testing specifically, there are some really good urinary tests on the market that people can collect at home. Great Plains Lab has their MycoTox, which is you just pee in a cup and you send it off to the lab. Real-Time Labs also has a urinary mycotoxin test. And ideally, if you could run both, that can be helpful because the methodologies for those two different tests are a little bit different. And I have found when I am able to order both tests for a patient, like if finances aren't a concern, sometimes the Real-Time Labs will pick up a specific type of group of toxins called the trichothecenes. It's a little bit better in my experience than what shows up on the Great Plains. But I will say overall, if I have a suspicion that this is a problem and I run either one of the urinary mycotoxin tests, usually it does come back positive with elevations of those toxins in the urine. There are also some basic blood work type of tests that could be run. A lot of practitioners will test what are called the HLA genes, and there are some specific genes, HLA DR, I believe. But basically, there's a subset of people that will respond in a very exaggerated way to mold toxins. And that's called, the dreaded genotype. And they can develop what's called CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome, where their genetics basically have structured their immune system in such a way where their immune system cannot recognize these toxins or know what to do about them. And so there's just this constant circulation of the toxins driving an immune firestorm. I personally don't test the genetics because it's not going to change how I treat. If someone is showing the signs and symptoms of CIRS, and I have evidence that they are toxic, that they've been exposed, unless I have a very compelling reason, sometimes people do want to know because they'll say, well, why am I sick, but my kids are fine? And that could be that mom has those genetics, dad does not, and maybe the kids did or did not get those genes. Wow. So you can have one family under the same roof, and maybe the kids are sick and one of the parents is not. It could be a workplace where maybe only two coworkers are sick, but everyone else is fine, because the genetics have a very profound influence on how strongly someone is going to react. Another test that can be helpful is C4a complement. That is a type of immune fragment that is really elevated specifically from mycotoxins. There's another one called TGF beta, transforming growth factor beta, that is often elevated in mold related illness. And then it's important to test your environment, because and this is what makes this so frustrating. You can be exposed to mold like in the past. And because these toxins can stay stuck in our body and get recirculated through the bile and through the liver and small intestine, they just kind of keep going around and around. And so even if you are out of that exposure that happened, years ago, you could still be sick. And mold can colonize inside of our body. It can colonize dental cavitations. It can colonize the sinuses, the gut. So again, any kind of IBS or intestinal bacterial overgrowth that isn't getting better, you have to rule out mold. But you want to test your environment to make sure that you're not still being exposed, because, and I've told patients this, it's a waste of time and money for us to go into all of these like treatment protocols and even start using things to detoxify if you're just going to go home and keep getting re-exposed. So that is the hardest but most important aspect of all of this, is removing yourself from the exposure. I get that it is a scary thought to have to inspect, remediate, possibly even move. And, just at a high level, if your home has been heavily exposed to mold, or if there's been water damage, sometimes even things like furniture and papers and books are not salvageable, because the mold is more than just the colony. There are fragments and cell wall particles and volatile organic compounds. That's that musty smell. Mm-hmm. Whenever you smell that musty mold, those are VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. And so there's multi-parts to the mold, and they permeate the entire environment. And you can't necessarily kill or remove these things. And so it's overwhelming. And also think about the type of person that has this multi-system, multi-symptom picture going on. They've probably been to a lot of practitioners. A lot of our patients have been to 2 different naturopathic doctors or a different functional medicine, and they've spent $2,000 here, and they're still not better because no one has looked for mold. And then here we are saying, okay, now order these new tests and hire a mold inspector. So I try to be so targeted with the recommendations and what's going to have the biggest leverage. And that is making sure your current environment is safe. One of the common myths out there is that if you live in a dry climate, like if you ask the average person, is there mold in your home? They're going to say no. They'll say my house is new, or I live in a dry climate, or, I don't smell anything. None of that matters. Mold can grow anywhere. I will acknowledge that not every mold is highly toxic, but any kind of mold can be allergenic. And again, depending on the totality of what's filling up your stress bucket, that could be still a big piece for you. And, my clinic is in Colorado. One of the things we hear a lot is, well, it's so dry here, there couldn't possibly be mold. Again, mold can grow anywhere. And actually it can be more aggressive in a dry climate because it feels more threatened for survival. So it can become more hardy. It can produce more toxins and a self-defense mechanism. So it doesn't matter. And I've worked with patients who say, but my home is new. I've had patients with beautiful multi-million-dollar homes, and they've had mold because all it takes is a flood, a pipe that wasn't installed correctly, a window that wasn't sealed properly. Sometimes the structure of the building itself is conducive to flooding and water damage, which can breed mold. I grew up in a beautiful house, but it had a flat roof and it leaked all the time. So
that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. We had a beautiful sun deck, but it poured inside the house. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And some people will say, well, when I bought my home, we did a mold inspection. Nothing came back. Most mold inspectors, and I'm not trying to criticize, but this is true. Most mold inspectors miss it. And it can take multiple rounds to find something. You have to get a good inspector. I know a couple of wonderful inspectors here in Colorado, but ideally you would find someone who's certified by the IICRC. And I can never remember the acronym, but it's something about like the international inspection something, but IICRC, they have, you know, the top certification levels, because if you get an inspector that just comes into the room and waves a wand for 2 minutes, like air sampling alone is not reliable, and you need to be aware of moisture levels, possible leaks. Again, a common finding is like, oh, there's a leak under the dishwasher, or, oh yeah, a couple of years ago, the washing machine leaked. I didn't think about that. It can be very subtle. It's not always this classic picture of like my basement flooded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
You know, it's funny that you would mention the washing machine,
Uh-huh.
because there has been a mold smell coming from the washing machine.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting. I was just talking about it. And next thing you know, my Facebook is feeding me stuff that you can do. It's like products that you can buy as a sponsored. It's like they're listening to what I'm saying, and they're selling me a product. It's just insane. And I told my husband, I said, let's just do this. But I also read that you could do it yourself with vinegar and baking soda, and you can clean it. And I'm like, well, I'll just get the tablets, you know. But everybody's different. Everybody wants to do different. But even that could mold grow in your washing machine.
Oh yeah, especially the front loading machines. And if you have a top loading machine, it's a good idea to leave the lid open so it can dry out. You know, you brought up a good point. Certain things like cleaning or like a hose gasket or something like that, that's usually fine. But I don't want people to think that they can self-remediate, especially when we don't know what we don't know. Because number one, that can re-expose you. You're storing things up. And so that could really re-expose you to a lot more of the mold and the fragments, the toxins. But number two, just because you think the mold isn't visible anymore doesn't mean that the remediation has taken place. Sometimes the drywall needs to be removed. Bleach actually makes it worse because it can make it kind of desiccates it and makes it airborne, and it leaves behind a residue that makes future mold growth more likely. So you actually don't want to use bleach on mold. And you know, if something is visible, you might not know what kind of species that mold is. The classic black mold is called Stachybotrys. It's highly toxic. That one is pretty exclusive to a water damaged environment. But I just want people to be very careful. This is not an area that you want to go cheap. I understand it's expensive. And unfortunately, a lot of times I would say homeowners insurance doesn't cover mold remediation. And I've spoken to my inspectors and remediators here locally in Colorado, and they all say the same thing. It can be very hard. Sometimes even the landlord doesn't want to help a tenant. So we've had to write letters and cite the Americans with Disabilities Act and tie it into like respiratory issues, neurological, whatever, so that they have the legal right to break their lease. It's really unfortunate. I was going to say another point, but there's so much we can cover.
Well, you know, and that we had just signed our 5th year. We were in the same place for 5 years, but there was terrible mold smell in the garage. Yeah. And so every time I'd go in the garage, or sometimes my car would smell like mold. And so we had this place that we live in now became available, and I used the mold in the garage, and they allowed me to get out. Good. And let me tell you, all of my husband's very expensive, you know, Toomey luggage. He had Toomey luggage that was covered in mold, and we tried to clean it there for a while. And you know what? I've done classes about mold in the past, 2015, but I didn't even think, well, this happened to her, that happened to him. Yeah. How, you know, I still haven't confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that this is maybe why I have not been able to. Eating well is not going to be enough. You know, taking away the mold may not be enough. I mean, there's different things that we need to do. That's why we started the M-cubed detox experience, because, you know, we need to know that how do we do it? So we're going to have teachers come in the evening, Tuesday nights. We're going to have classes so that we can learn how to remediate, how to hire somebody. The do-it-yourself mold people. I just had a conversation with them on Friday. We're going to be giving away some mold kits but for the people that are in the group. So it's not going to be just for everybody who listens to the classroom, but the people that are taking that extra step and they're joining our community. We're going to have some giveaways for them so that they can, reduce some of their costs. We're lowering, they're lowering the testing by 10, 15%, depending on which one they choose to do. Nutrimetics has decided that, and I believe Nutrimetics right now is having a 20% off, but if they enter Lily 10, they can enter Lily 10, but they'll still get that 20% off. But soon there's not going to be a 20% and it'll only be 10%. So Lily 10 will be what they get. But if they want to take advantage of it and get all their stuff today, I think today or tomorrow is when the last of it is. So there's just so many things that we don't know. And here we are cleaning all this stuff. Fortunately, we ended up throwing it in the trash, but we don't know what we've brought over from our other garage. So it's one of those things where we need to do the right things for us and hopefully feel the experience in our bodies, kind of like let go of some of these symptoms, which is what I'm looking forward to. And so I want to encourage all of you to go to Lily@whenyouneedafriend.com. And when you go there, the M Cube detox experience will pop up, click on it, check it out. If you want to be a part of it and you want to go through all of it and do everything that you need to do, then that's up to you. If you just want to do the 10-week detox with us and you make sure that your house is clean and your environment is clean, you can do whatever you want to do. Or you can, and if you can't attend the 7 p.m. Eastern time classes that we're going to do every Tuesday night from September 20th to December 6th, then you can watch the recordings at your convenience and you could watch it over and over again. So that if you didn't write something down, we just want to support, because we need support. When I say we, I mean Robert and I are going to go through this detox with you. So it's not like we have gone through it already. No, this is real time for us. So I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com, subscribe, because when you subscribe, you have all our teachers' information. Right now, if you go to the blog, you will have Dr. Ashley Biscoe's information for Attune Medical. It'll take you straight to her website. She also has courses that you can take there and things that you can do with her. You can like and follow me on social media. Subscribe to the channel, of course, subscribe. You can watch the classes live at whenyouneedafriend.com. So if you don't like YouTube, you don't like Facebook for whatever reason, then you can just go onto the website and watch the classes live. We're gonna work together to get discounts for everybody. It's a work in progress because it's really difficult to negotiate because people pay full price for this. And so I'm just grateful for those that have said, yes, we will work with you. We will support your group. And then last, just check out the Shop Now bag, help out in any way, check out our sponsors, help them out, support them the way that they supported the classroom. And last but not least, you can become an enrolled student in the classroom. Let's suppose that you want to say, I know that this is expensive for someone. I want to donate the $299. If you register today, it's $249. So it's a $50 off if you register by today. But if, let's say you have gone through this mold and you're in the other side of the mold detoxing and you want to sponsor somebody that can't afford to do it, maybe pay for their testing, whatever you want to do, please reach out to me at Lily@whenyouneedafriend.com. It takes a village, they say. And so I'm hoping that we can all work together to help somebody, whether it's us or you help somebody else, let's do it. We're all in this together. And if you could support the classroom, even better. Today we have Dr. Ashley Biscoe in the classroom. She is from Attune Medical. You can go to attunemed.com. You can also find her on YouTube and Facebook. And actually you can find her and Dr. Eglin, who's going to be coming next week. And we're going to talk about eczema. We're going to talk about eczema and other skin conditions and what we can do. It's so amazing. Dr. Biscoe, have we become so accustomed to sickness that we have not even thought that we could get better?
I believe so. That's something I hear a lot from our patients, is that You know, when we adapt to being sick all the time or expecting that we will become ill, that becomes our new baseline. And we don't even have awareness of what feeling good actually means. Feeling at peace in our bodies, waking up with energy and a clear mind. I think that's very true. And it's a systemic issue, not just in terms of the body, but we live in a society where our food system is not conducive to health. Our value of hustle culture and even things like social media addiction or using the internet and being glued to devices instead of spending time in nature. We're exposed to Wi-Fi radiation. There's so many things in our environment, not just mold, that create systems of sickness.
Does it ever go away? I mean,
yes,
because it's okay. So let's talk about the other side. Let's say somebody wants to do this detox with us, but they just want to do the detox portion. They don't want to take supplements, or they don't want to do the testing because maybe they are sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And maybe this is their last attempt of saying, yes, I have fibromyalgia, I have MS, I have this, but it's not getting better with conventional medicine. Yes. Can someone do a detox program with the disclaimer that their home is mold free and that their body is or they've removed the metals from their mouth, and the toxic overload going less and less? Will it make people feel better and better?
It absolutely should, because again, that flow within you, that vital force within you is always trying to move in the direction of healing, correction, restoration. And so when we remove the obstacles that are getting in its way, whether it's a toxicity from a heavy metal or a mold or an infection, then the body has breathing room. It can start, instead of being in survival mode, constantly fighting this toxin or this infection or whatever it is, then it can focus on normal physiological functioning. Supplements can play a very important role with this. When it comes to mold specifically, I use a lot of botanical medicines to help kill colonized mold. I use botanicals to help restore a balance of inflammation. You mentioned earlier that you were having trouble sleeping. That's a common symptom we see because the brain is so inflamed that your normal sleep rhythms get disrupted. And so if we can use something to calm the immune system, calm the brain and the nervous system, that can be really supportive. The right nutrition, not just from foods, but sometimes when you've been sick for a very long time, the body becomes significantly depleted, and supplementing with higher doses for a period of time can be incredibly supportive. I will say that supplement quality matters. They have found, and not to go on a side tangent here, but big box stores like GNC, Walmart, Target, even Amazon have all been found to sell fake supplements. They've been adulterated. They've got ingredients inside that are not actually on the label. So you have to be very careful with the supplements that you do choose. And it can be helpful when you're working like with someone like you, Lillian, and you've got NutriMedics on board. I'm such a fan of NutriMedics, but that way that you're being guided towards high quality products that are effective and not contaminated.
Yeah. Well, let me add to this. It's not just going to be me. I'm a student in this journey. We're going to have Dr. Lee Cowden, who's going to oversee the whole event, the whole 12 weeks, which is so wonderful. And we're going to have Neil Nathan come on. We're going to have, not only Dr. Lee, but we're going to have people that talk about mold remediation and what to look for and how to, it's just going to be an incredible course. Yeah. And of course, they're going to be coming on to the classroom and they're going to be talking in the classroom, but it's 1 hour. There's not going to be a Q&A. There's not going to be, when we meet on a Tuesday night, we're going to be able to have this one-on-one conversations, where they can write their questions down. I can ask the questions so that whoever's the teacher that evening, along with Dr. Lee Cowden, they will be able to go through this process. And I'm just thrilled because we were, like I said, we were so overwhelmed and I eat well. I've eaten a nutritarian lifestyle for the most part since 2015. Sometimes I'm better than others, but for the most part, I would say 90% I eat clean. And I'm still having symptoms. And not only that, it reminded me of when I learned of my food allergies, food sensitivities. I learned that I was allergic to wheat, dairy, rye, peanuts, almonds, peas. And I used to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwich on wheat toast with a glass of milk as a snack every day. I used to love that. But when I looked at that, all of a sudden that peanut butter and jelly sandwich with comfort, whatever, became my enemy. And immediately, I had chronic stomach pains. And immediately, once I discovered that that was part of what was causing me to feel sick all the time, I quit it cold turkey. And I couldn't believe how within 24 hours, how good I felt. I had not said for 2 years, my stomach doesn't hurt. I actually thought my stomach doesn't hurt. And until you start doing things like that and feeling better, you don't know you could feel better.
Yes.
So I'm excited to be a part of this because this reminds me of that time where I had to completely read every label, completely change everything I ate, even my makeup had wheat, which explained why my eyes would itch sometimes and why I would have cystic acne. And I did not know what I didn't know. And I really do believe that the classroom started off as a radio show. Now the classroom has saved my life. It has changed my life. And it's doctors like you that make this work so well. And so what I'm looking forward to is coming together as a community and lifting each other up, whether it's prayer or praise or cheering each other on. Because, I would imagine people, and maybe you can attest to this, do people isolate when they're going through this? Because now the doctors can't find anything wrong with them. And then they say, yeah, it's in your head.
Yes. They say, yeah, it's in your head, which is basically medical gaslighting. Which I have such a problem with. But then the cruel irony to all of this is that because the brain is inflamed and that can create anxiety and depression, like isolation can be manifestations of anxiety and depression.
Correct.
And when we're not feeling well, guess what? We tend to stay home. So we're missing school, we're missing work. And if there's mold in our home, that's even greater exposure. So it's like this vicious cycle. I wondered with the COVID lockdowns, if people would have exacerbations, of their symptoms with spending more time at home if they had water damage in their home. A lot of workplaces do have mold also. Schools, public buildings, courthouses are notoriously moldy. They tend to be older buildings and lack the budget to, stay on top of the pipes and remediation and things like that. And you brought up such an important point. Like you are someone that does all the right things.
Not always, but I work
at a high level. You're at least aware of like what you eat and basic
and emotions. Yeah.
Yes. And that's kind of the classic person that we see a lot of the time. Sometimes people have a little more heavy lifting to do, but a lot of times we see people who are so frustrated because they're like, I don't get it. I get to bed on time. I eat a clean diet. I use clean personal care product. Like they're doing all the basics that I would recommend, but this missing piece of environmental toxicity hasn't been uncovered. And so they're so hard on themselves because they're like, what am I doing wrong? I'm really we trying here? And we have to not keep doing the same things over and over. We have to try a different approach. And that's where looking literally outside of yourself and thinking about these external influences that can have very real impacts on the body, just so important to pay attention to, and work with someone or join a program like the M3 that can help you understand these concepts and take steps. And I just want to emphasize here, it can be very helpful and sometimes incredibly appropriate to work with a practitioner that can really help you fine tune what's going to work for you in a very safe way. But there's so much that you can do on your own. You mentioned having Neil Nathan into your program. He's got some wonderful books. I adore his work. Getting an air purifier, especially one that has UV lights, those can help to destroy some of the, trap and destroy some of the fragments and VOCs in the air. There are some, natural foggers and things that you can use to help keep things at bay in your home environment until you can really jump in and figure out your next steps in terms of remediation. So I never want someone to feel like they're stuck without help or resources or things that they can do where they are with what they have.
That's wonderful. That is really wonderful. And we're trying to get Attune Medical to join us as well in the MQ detox experience, because we need to hear from everybody. Now, I know that Dr. Biscoe has an online, it's called Body Bliss, and she had mentioned that to me while as we were talking. What is Body Bliss, and what do people expect? Is that something if they wanted to do that with you?
Sure. So Body Bliss, and it's newer. We just launched it over the spring, but it's basically the online version of our signature methodology that we use with our one-on-one patients. So it's an online program. And when you sign up, the lessons are dripped out week by week. And then right now, when you join, we also include one coaching call with either me or Dr. Egeland. There is a self-assessment, so you can help to pinpoint your specific triggers or areas that need a lot of focus. We show you how to order one of our favorite functional medicine lab tests on your own. And then there's an explanatory module, so you can follow along with your results step by step and know what to do about your results. And even in the short time that we've had it going, we've just been so excited that people are noticing these big transformations in less than 8 weeks. And so it truly is our signature approach in an online format that anyone can do. And so if you wanted to learn more about that, you can head over to getbodybliss.com. And that explains more details about what the program covers, how it works, all of that.
Very good. Very good. Now, what are some of the other things, any products? Because, I talk about Keep Me Safe Organics here in the classroom, all organic, no synthetics, no chemicals. And I use that from head to toe. And it's amazing how it's changed my skin. But the other day, I have been going back and forth with my air conditioning guy, because I'm getting a lot of black, it's like a lot of black stuff in my filters, like right away. It was never like that, right? Well, he told me, that's soot from lighting your candles. And so if that's soot from lighting the candles, I'm thinking, if it's going through my UV light and going through and it's landing there, what are some of the other things? Can candles cause, we're about 2 minutes in, but can candles cause a problem when it comes to metals in our body or?
Yeah, and this was something that I used to say, if you're going to burn a candle, make sure it's not synthetic fragrance, get a beeswax. But now I realize anytime you burn something, that's a form of air pollution. So candles, especially if you do it frequently or in large quantities, that can be a problem. I would say if you're someone that absolutely must use a candle in your home, definitely choose one that's made with, something like natural beeswax, maybe essential oils, not like the Bath and Body Works fake perfume ones. Those
Yeah.
are toxic phthalate type of chemicals. But I recommend that everyone invest in a good air purifier. I mean, we breathe thousands of times per day, and we have capillaries and blood vessels in our lungs that go into our systemic circulation. So, air pollution has been linked with high blood pressure, neurological conditions, cancers. It's one of those exposures that it's all around us and we don't think about it because it's just there.
My goodness.
Yep. So we do have, and again, I'm not trying to suck the fun out of anyone's life. It can be overwhelming when we're saying, don't eat this and don't wear that kind of makeup and don't do that. But I'm all about harm reduction and giving people information so that they can make choices.
Well, I love it. I love it. And I want to encourage all of you to consider joining the M Cube Detox Experience. That's molds, metals, and microbes from treatment to recovery with support. And it starts on September 20th, but today's the last day. You can get a discount of $50 to join, and you will have the support not only of Dr. Lee Cowden, but you will also have the support of all the other teachers that are coming into the classroom to teach on Tuesday nights, and the group that's going to come together, like-minded, all of us wanting to heal. And so I'm just really excited about this. And I'm so excited about you, Dr. Biscoe, for coming on today and sharing some more information. We're going to do the Teacher's Pet Corner just for a little bit. If you have any questions, type in your cue, write your questions down, and we'll get to that when right away, as soon as we're done here. And so thank you so much. Please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Ashley Biscoe wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, so we're going to only be on for like 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, type in a queue, write your questions down, and I'll ask them on the air and Dr. Biscoe will answer them. So what are some of other things that we're doing to ourselves? I know that lotions and beauty products are key, soap and all that, but what are other products that we're doing that can not just bring, I'm not talking about molds, metals, and microbes, but can tax our immune system or make us, feel like that cup runneth over. Like, this is how I felt, like a little thimble that everything is like my body is reacting to. It used to be like this. And yeah. I think, in 2017, I was triggered with a car accident. I think that triggered things. And then, of course, life happens. Since 2017, I would feel better, feel worse, feel better. But right now I feel like I'm like a little thimble and that I'm reacting. I usually say it's good to be a thimble when it comes to being in your essence. It's like overjoy, overflowing and feeling that gratitude that we should have a thimble-sized vessel. But when it comes to being healthy, you want a much bigger vessel. So share a little bit about some other things that you know of can cause toxic overload, not necessarily mold or anything like that, but could be making mold sensitivity even more exacerbated.
Oh yeah, gosh, so many things. So you mentioned personal care products, things like lotions, fragrances, cosmetics. Another thing that comes to mind are household cleaners. There are a lot of, if you walk down the cleaning aisle at the store,
I can't do it.
Exactly. And honestly, chemical sensitivity is often a sign of biotoxin illness because these toxins really overstimulate the brain and the central nervous system and the immune system. You become overly sensitive to sights, sounds, smells, even like emotions. You can be very irritable. So I think about household cleaning products. Emotions are toxic if they're negative emotions. And Dr. Caroline Leaf has even talked about research showing that a negative thought causes the body to respond as if it were under attack by an infection. So
Wow.
there can be a real physiological inflammatory response to dwelling on the negative. This is why the news is toxic. This is
Turn it off.
why, yeah, toxic or abusive relationships are not only traumatizing, but that is an emotional toxin that can impact our actual physiology. Another thing that I consider to be a toxin that I don't think gets talked about enough is what I call vitamin R deficiency. Vitamin R, rest, recreation, rejuvenation, relaxation, creativity, these are actual biological systems. And if we are not feeding these biological systems for rest, recreation, joy, laughter, and I get it's hard, it can be harder to do those things when you're not feeling well. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm delusional here, but sometimes it is the lack of that vitamin R that has been the catalyst for the sickness or that loss of vital force where our system just isn't as robust. I also think about toxins in food. So we spent a lot of time today talking about mold. There are a lot of moldy foods. You mentioned your peanut butter, right? Peanuts are notoriously moldy. Mold is used in the production of cheese, nuts and grains, especially corn, oats. I know a local inspector here in Colorado, and he said that he often gets called to inspect food manufacturing facilities. And he said, you wouldn't believe these big barrels of oats that are just covered in aspergillus mold. So a lot of our foods are moldy. And even the US Department of Agriculture acknowledges that that is a harm. It hurts the farm animals, it can hurt us.
Wow.
Wheat
Wow.
can be a problem with glyphosate. The Roundup chemical is often sprayed as a desiccant. So pesticides, herbicides, cleaners, personal care, it's all around us. The good thing is we have detox pathways in our body. So if we can reduce the input as much as possible and take steps to support and facilitate those detox pathways, we can get that stuff out of our body as much as we can, and really help to facilitate healing.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, it's one of those things where I'm excited, and at the same time, we're relearning how to eat all over again.
Yes.
And like I love cashews. I normally eat a vegan or a nutritarian lifestyle. So if I have animal products, it's just very little and very, very, very specific. If I will have it, it has to be wild caught. It can't be, farm raised. But even that is going to be so different for me. It's I think that Dr. Cowden wants us to do a vegan keto. A vegan keto during that time, but it's very specific. You can't eat the same food 2 days in a row. Cashews, I love cashews, but cashews is in the no list. Pistachios. And you know what? I've been like a little Pac-Man or Pac-woman. I'm like, I got to get rid of these pistachios. I'm like, I am feeding these mycotoxins. I'm like, I got to get rid of my cashews. So pretty soon the house will be empty of all this stuff, but I'm just preparing myself for like this complete detox, all in, doing this with the people that are going to be joining us. And I'm really excited about it. During the class today, is there anything that you may wanted to say that we just didn't come up, or that you think is important when dealing with mold, metals, and microbes?
I think we covered a lot. Probably the biggest point I would hone in on is that if you're someone who has had unexplainable symptoms or unusual symptoms or anything neurological, and maybe the scans aren't showing anything, do consider environmental mold exposure. We kind of have a saying around our clinic, Attune Functional Medicine, that unexplained illness is mold until proven otherwise. Again, sometimes that can fall under the Lyme and co-infection category, but I think that's a piece that often gets missed. And I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed. There are answers, there are things you can do, but it starts with the awareness. And even if it feels uncomfortable to consider that your home might be affected by mold or water damage, your health is priceless. You can get a new home, you can earn more money, you are not replaceable, and your health is what is allowing you to be on this earth, serving your purpose. And so I just think that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, that why is so important.
Yes.
Why are we doing this? But it's very easily forgotten when we don't feel well. And I'm hoping
Yes.
that we will continue to feel well together. That's the purpose of the classroom, is to choose and take your life back. And so I'm thrilled that you've been a part of this journey for me as well. Even with the Epstein-Barr, and I'm just so grateful to you for that. Even with the Epstein-Barr, to discover that could be what could be happening to me, and having the right tools to test, the right test to confirm that that's what it was. And then discovering that mold can reactivate Epstein-Barr, it was like, oh my gosh, everything is just falling into place. And I'm hoping that this is what I need, and what I get to do and choose to do to get my health back completely. And so I want to remind people once again that today's the last day to get your $50 off if you want to join the M Cube detox experience. That's mold, metals, and microbes from treatment to recovery with support. And I just want to add to this that please share this video. Please share my thank you video later on, because I want, so that Facebook has garbled every single video that I've done in the even going to the beach, and recording the sunrise was a violation. So I'm reaching out to them saying, I think this was an accident, but unless you share this, people won't see it. So we need for you to work together, share. Anyone, we don't know what we don't know. So please share this, and invite and encourage people to take their health back too with the M Cube detox experience, so that we can all learn and grow together. Thank you so much, Dr. Biscoe, for sharing your wisdom once again. And I'm looking forward to meeting Dr. Eglin next week as we talk about the skin and how so many people have eczema and rosacea, and we've learned to live with it. Just don't take away the pizza, don't take away the gluten, right?
Yes.
So we're going to learn any tips real quick for people with eczema, any like seeds would you like to plant today?
Well, there is a direct gut skin connection. So very often when there is an eczema or any sort of skin condition, that is a mirror of what's happening in the gut. And your gut relates to many different things, including the mold we talked about today, including the nutrition. But everything is healable, in my opinion. I tried very hard not to place limiting beliefs on what the human body is capable of, or what someone's story or outcome can be. So,
well, I love that. You're speaking to your tribe, because that's exactly what we believe here. And so thank you so much for coming in. And for those of you, again, please share this, tag your friends to this, because it's not getting out. I had a friend or someone that I met at an event looking for the Lillian McDermott radio show at Lillian's radio show. They just on Facebook at Lillian's radio show, nothing came up. So I had to send a link to I had to text them my link to my show, and that was the only way they found it. So I'm asking you, if you don't want to donate $1 or $1,000 a month, the best way you can help the classroom is to share. So thank you so much for watching today. Please share generously, and let's continue to heal together. Thank you so much, Dr. Biscoe.
thank you.